get started. My name is Joseph Thomas. I'm the director of the National Center for the Study of Children's Literature. And we're the ones hosting this talk by Eric Galbraith. So thanks to the library, Lynn Salem in particular helped book this room for us. And Marshall Tubman in the back with the Eagles hoodie on. Thanks for coming and helping us with the tech stuff. And of course, our graduate assistants, Sophia and Ashley. Where are you guys? They took care of a lot of the logistics that made this event possible. So thank you to you guys. And of course, Dr. Mary Galbraith, who is the star of the show. She's always struck me. She's been here since long before I arrived, and she's always struck me as a prototypical SoCal woman, a kind of salient exemplar. She was born in Los Angeles, and she spent her youth shuttling back and forth between LA and London. She then, when she graduated from high school, she headed a little south of LA to UC Irvine, where she attended the legendary UC Irvine during its very first year. And afterwards, she left SoCal for Berkeley, where her worldly, cosmopolitan SoCal moodiness was enriched and complicated by the student protests going on during 1969, the high watermark of the 60s youthful utopian hopefulness. But that high watermark brought with it, as Mary reflects in a recent interview, tanks on campus, helicopters flying overhead, dropping tear gas. So she got out, had a kid, lived her life, returning to school in the 1980s, eventually settling at SUNY Buffalo, a spot that couldn't be more different from SoCal. Yet Mary flourished there, working as a graduate assistant for the Cognitive Science graduate group. She worked on her doctorate in English while taking courses in philosophy, psychology, computer science, child language acquisition. The search and intelligence that came of age traveling back and forth between London and Los Angeles, primed for difference, for unexpected confluences and concatenations, began developing the interdisciplinary approach we've come to call childhood studies, a theoretical and practical academic approach that puts into conversation the resonant insights of literature, psychology, history, anthropology, and neurobiology as a means of better understanding childhood, a time in which the child's varied experiences of the world has yet to calcify into rigid categories. Although I wouldn't call her a romantic per se, maybe not to her face, she does respect the child and his novel experience of the still new world. Wordsworth's mighty prophet, seer blessed, whose exterior semblance doth belie its soul's immensity. Her ranging, complex, and groundbreaking scholarly work serves the interests of, as she puts it, feeling from the other side, of understanding as best we're able the child's existential situation from the child's perspective, a critical paradigm suggestive of what Peter Hunt would come to call childist criticism. Mary's work is marked by a desire to articulate the child's experience as rigorously as possible, using all the theoretical and scientific and literary critical tools available to us. Today, we'll get a taste of that project. But first, knowing how important students are to Mary's work, she exemplifies the scholar-teacher paradigm. I'd like to invite one of her students, Ashley, to the front of the room to give Mary the kind of introduction I'm unable to give.
Hi again, my name is Ashley, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be speaking to all of you today. It was my honor to be Dr. Galbraith's student last fall in her English 501 Literature for Children course. Professor Galbraith's class was my first encounter with the study of children's literature. The theme of that course was fantasy and a touch of the real, which highlighted the authorial background that underlies the fantastical aspects of familiar texts such showed us how children's literature provides a place for authors to work through childhood traumas, reimagine difficult relationships, and create alternative narratives in which the child character has unprecedented agency. This course was also my first scholarly encounter with Asian art. We utilized Japanese aesthetics to analyze picture books and Hayao Miyazaki's movies as well. Dr. Galbraith is stunningly dedicated to her scholarship. And as a student just barely entering the children's lit field, I was shocked at the complexity of her research and how much time and effort she gave it on top of all the courses she was teaching. Even so, she always gave her students her full attention, as many of you know, meeting us where we were and yet challenging us to push ourselves further, to think critically about even our most cherished childhood stories and movies. Furthermore, she taught that while academic critique is valuable, we can still appreciate texts for the affect and responses they evoke. These insights affirmed my interest in studying children's literature at the graduate level, and now I focus my research on Asian American children's literature that reflects the lived experience of its authors and leaders. I owe much of my growth as a scholar to my experience in Dr. Galbraith's passion, and it is a huge honor and privilege to introduce all of you, Dr.
Well, I am a romantic. No problem. But I don't think being a romantic means you can't be other things. I like the Greek word for university is community, which means all knowledge. So getting a wide variety of methodologies, a wide variety of evidence, a wide variety. But of course, my favorite being literature, because that's my home department, and that's where I get the most pleasure in terms of reading literature. Okay, so today I'm actually, the topic is not beginning the focus on children's literature, but it's on literature, and to the extent that it is literature, which is very controversial as well, I don't know. I'm one of those people that still uses literature in the honorific sense. So I will be using it in that sense throughout the day, so just to let you know that that's, I always say we should have a team taught class with all the different children's literature classes. You didn't think like completely different. Okay, so I'm going to begin with Bueller's Deictic Imaginary. And most of you have another flyer, and I have more here. So this is the first tough term that we're going to come across, but I want you to not be afraid of it. In fact, Bueller has a funny thing that he says, like, don't get lost in profound awe at this, because it is kind of mystical. Except it's mystical in the other direction. I always like to say there's things too far away and we can't grasp them, and there's things too close we can't grasp them. And that literature pulls out, when it's good, is pulling out the intimate and putting it at a distance that you can deal with. Things just like Tolkien, I hate allegory, and yet, what an allegory it is, but it's what I call a mere allegory, Lord of the Rings. So, Deictic Imaginary, and there's two words, deixis and imaginary. Deixis is a Greek word, should be pronounced deixis, I suppose, but I wouldn't say deixis too long. And it's the most obvious thing in the world, that I'm here, you're there, we're in the same ad oculos orientation here, although everybody has a slightly different spatial position, but even more so, of course. We have very, very different mental position and physical condition. So it's the here, the now, and the self. And it's interesting to me that I guess students in liberal studies take linguistics, but I always ask them, do they ever talk about reference? And they, no, they don't. So reference is, like, if you don't know what people are talking about, language is just something up here. It has to be rooted or anchored in something. And what it's anchored in is deixis. It's a deictic field that we refer to for our orientation in using language. Now, of course, it's gotten very, very complicated very quickly lately with all of the different technologies, right? I always say, it's like that old saw about the lie, which is also true, that the lie is halfway around the world before the truth is putting its boots on. Gosh, we're just putting our boots on, aren't we, about all the changes that are going on in the world. Okay, so live deixis, here, now, self, precedes language. And actually we could have some controversy about whether it is a linguistic phenomenon or whether it is a bodily phenomenon. So a bit of both, usually when we're using language. But animals certainly do orient themselves in space. I don't know if they orient themselves in time. I was just rereading To a Mouse today. And Ravi Birds is saying, at least you don't have to think about the future. I know, might do, but no, you have to think winter's coming. So language allows people to create different deictic orientations that are transportable. That's just the easy way to put it. And in one sense, like let's say I wanted to talk about my house and you know how you go into the kitchen and turn on the light or whatever, I can tell you about it and you're not at my house. So that's what I would call deixis in absentia, meaning I can explain to you something using my orientation from when I'm at home. So that also has reference in my mind, and in your mind, you are, when I say that, presumably trusting that I'm actually telling you something that has independent reference. So in nonfiction or fictional, non-fictional statements, when I say my kitchen is small and it's back in the corner, you think I have a mental picture of that and that I'm not just making stuff up. No, that's another problem. But the other form of deixis, there is one more, but I won't talk about it. Deixis and phantasma, which I'm just referring to here as the deictic imaginary, is deixis that I make up entirely, and you're fine with that because it's fiction. So I could say, you know, I'm not very good at making up a novel out of my head, but you know, she lived on a hill far from the valley, and she could see the farmhouse lights going up. You know, like I could jump right in wherever. And you, in your mind, are creating that place. You're not questioning, oh, there isn't a farmhouse there, you know, because that's fiction. It's an agreement that we have that we can just create things. So I like to just say the opposite. That's amazing, isn't it? And you guys are a good group of readers. You manage that feat every time you open up a novel and start. And I saw a book that compared this with, let's say you were a musician. Let's say you're Beethoven. Of course, well, since he was deaf, I get the flat, maybe I'll leave him out. But you're a musician and you write scores. First of all, can you play them in your head without having an orchestra practice them? And is there anyone in this room who can read a musical score and with that you're not familiar with and can make up the music in your head? Apparently it's a very rare skill. But that's just what you're doing when you open the book, right? You're saying, oh, give it whatever you got and I'll build it. And there you go. I have a friend that played Minecraft constantly at sort of people making these things and then emptying them out. Go along. Anyway, okay, so the deictic imaginary is one sense of deixis. It's a field that we are co-creating as writer and reader, or as speaker and listener. It's something that, remember we had that discussion, you said adults are better readers, and I said children are better readers. That's the sense that children are better readers. They are better at making an imaginary world than adults are. And so if you are writing fantasy and the child is able to read the book, They will be right ahead of you creating that world. So this has become a really important question in the human sciences, the humanities, and this is the time, I think, to pull out all the stops we have to make what we love and appreciate more loved and appreciated. And imagination is, in my mind, the most precious thing the human race has got. And we need it. So if you think of not just imaginary stories, but imagination in general, that is what we need, right? We need creativity. And one of the thinkers, Giambattista Vico, talked about how it's the primordial imagination is the closest thing we have to a kind of intersubjectivity that is before language. That we are able, we actually, it sounds mystical, but think of all the animals running around, like the starlings, like, woo, they go like that in the sky, like, how are they doing that? You know? But we have a lot of ways of almost chemically picking up on each other when we're present to each other. So the question is, what does it take for somebody to write a book that puts you through the experiences that you have been through in reading literature? One of my assignments in 306W is write about the most intense scene you know of from children's literature, and just show me how it works. How did it do what it did? And of course, it's sneaky because I said you had to pick the most intense, so you can't say that was boring, like, well, I just picked a really boring scene. So it's really hard to go back and look at those words and say, how did they do what they did? So the Deictic imaginary is looking at the cues in reading that have you setting up a here and now and a self, and also an objective world that exists outside of the self. I'm talking about characters now. An objective world that exists outside of the self's interior world. Although there are books in which it's really hard to tell the interior world from the exterior world. And some of my favorites too, like Franz Kafka or something. So that took a while, but I remember. Let's go back one. I do like to use picture books as illustrations of what I'm talking about because they're so easy. And they have the same sophisticated techniques of showing things that more books for adults. This is a book called Come Away from the Water, Shirley. A British artist who just died 2 years ago. This is the gutter of the book. And these are Shirley's parents. And this is Shirley. How neatly does that show a sort of bifurcated mind in which Shirley is lost in imagination and her parents are just thinking about having a cup of coffee. And I recall taking my kids to the beach and just thinking about that cup of coffee while they're running into the ocean. But that, so that's such a brilliant title though. Come away from the water. We just came to the beach. Of course, there are a lot of rocks. It's a British beach, you can help. But isn't that brilliant the way it shows it? In fact, a lot of people just think that's funny, but it's also tragic, isn't it? Because all through the entire story, Mom is just saying, like, don't touch that seaweed. You don't know where it's been. And of course, she's joined by a dog who doesn't mind joining her at all. Okay, so that's kind of putting up, you see, setting, and what do they say? We're going to put our chairs up here. That is this is our orientation. We are setting up our chairs here, and we're just gonna sit here. Whereas she's going to go on an adventure.
And I like her looking at them back towards land.
Exactly.
Her looking towards
Yeah, it's really interesting because the whole thing of sort of seen from her position is seen from behind her. So you're kind of, you're seeing what she's seeing. Yeah, I love that picture. Anyway, okay. So. I think there's a way to just do it, right? Okay, so the next bolded thing on your handout is primordial embodied imagination, another mouthful. Giambattista Vico is another one of my heroes. A lot of my hero theorists are in this list. They are the most eccentric bunch you'll ever hope to meet. Eric Auerbach, who wrote Mimesis, the big tome about Mimesis, said this guy anticipated all the post-Enlightenment critique, and 50 years before, the Romantics came along, and living in Italy, only knowing about the Scholastics. He said this is one of the most amazing feats of intellectual, by yourself, just coming up with something that he didn't ever see. So that's a pretty good introduction to him. So he came up with the idea that not only the children begin language in primordial imagination, but that this was one of those, I'm sorry, more big words, ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, which means that each individual of a species repeats the history of evolution. So in his mind, the children come into the language speaking poetically, not in a kind of romantic way. He says that it's because they don't have the rational tools and they use metaphor for everything. And he says that's the way language probably started, in evolution. So there's a whole huge body of knowledge right now that says that, first of all, deixis, or embodied imagination, which you could say is a pretty clear synonym for deixis, meaning orienting yourself and your mind somewhere else, comes before language. So I connect that with Bueller's. And by the way, we're talking different centuries here. But again, these are people kind of talking to themselves across the centuries. And Vico was the first one to come up with that, although you always got to give Aristotle credit, right? Because his whole poetics is about how watching the tragedy elicits fear and pity from the audience, which is another way of saying that the playwright is presenting, and then we've got actors, and then we've got people in the audience who are all having this group experience. Now, in theater, they're all in the same room, but with all you guys and me, we're all reading. I always say, I'm not going to come in your room and see if you're reading. And that's what one of the most difficult things is. Many of you who take too many reading classes, I don't blame you, but still, I don't know how you actually read all of the books that you say you're reading. So I always say, by the way, read mine first, they're easier. This is good. Okay, so now we're going to switch to the 20th century, and we've got poetic narrative theory, beginning with Katja Hamburger, German, Banfield, American French, and Kuroda, Japanese, at UCSD, who came up, well, Banfield and Hamburger knew each other. I'm not sure if Kuroda and Banfield might have came up with it independently. The idea that a sentence in a novel has a completely different logic than statement. So a statement is one, again, I'm saying that if there's a reference, there's an independent reference, and saying, there's a spot on the rug here, and if you want to go up there, you'll see there's a spot on the right. So that's really good for evidence sharing, right? You know, you can all say, okay, you can't see the spot. Let's see. Okay, for here, there's a sticker on the wall which seems to have used the painter's tape to make a sign. Okay, so that's statement. But you know about that hill that the woman or the girl was on that I started to tell the story about. It's an independently existing fictive reality, which is just as independent of a statement such as is a real reality. And here's the kicker. Whereas real reality is because it is, a fictive reality is by virtue of its being narrated. So I like to think about Genesis, maybe take the personal God out of it and say, how is the earth created? You know, let there be light, and there was light. And so the model for a novel is saying, whatever I'm writing, that's what is. Now, some of it may be from a subjective perspective, like from a character's perspective, but if you said, well, you know, there are 3 moons on this one, fine. If they said, if the novel says Chicago is in Michigan, you're okay. Kind of weird, but yeah. So that's what we call artistic license. Like, in other words, you create the whatever world you want. Obviously, people use default systems of, you know, the regular world to kind of fill in the details. But the more literary fiction is, the more it departs from the consensus reality that you're used to. And therefore, it actually blows your mind. It actually works to create new rooms, make new paths. So that person is creating new synapses and all these different things in your brain as you're taking it up. But one of my favorite writers, I love writers on writing. And I'm going to make it a sad admission. I have never read any of Jean-Paul Sartre's novels, but I love his book about how to write. It's called What is Literature? Title. And he gives absolute adoration to readers because he says, I can't read what I write because I know where it's coming from inside of me. You know, it doesn't have that, that completion. It's always a work in progress. But you pick up the book. You're the one that gets the experience. You're the one that is going to complete the work. So readers are hugely important to writers, obviously. I don't think we've had ourselves on the ballot enough. And that's another one of those things, too, that has, well, we'll come to this later, but pedagogical consequences of much of what I'm saying is, boy, are we doing it wrong in terms of using literature in school. Okay, so moving to next. It's interesting. I'm just gonna read something. I look at tell me when it's. I gotta get to Little Match Girl pretty quickly here. Okay, I'm not gonna read you, but it's really fun. The dissertation abstract that I wrote before I wrote my dissertation, and I hadn't read it in years. I haven't even seen it in years, and found out I could download it in academia, not even here. Everything that I'm saying, I was saying back in 1989. I am completely repeating myself. So it's like I've been, how writers hammer on the same thing? I am hammering on the same thing, 30 years, how many years later? 30 years later. I am, and by the way, I haven't been reading in this field for a long time, so I'm just like, I guess you could even say I'm completely stuck in my ways. But actually, I think what I'm showing is that this fascination that I have with the body in the mind, with the body in language, the body, and how your body can well, there's all sorts of theories of how it's done, but it's like the contagion goes over to you as the reader when you are in the right state of mind and when it's a good book that you can get into. So this is something that Merleau-Ponty, my hero, another one, but one of his lines that I love is, the world is not I think that, but I can. So it's more about the possibilities that you feel with your body than it is about some thought you're having here up. Vico was also, just to let you know in terms of the history of philosophy, he was an anti-Cartesian, the mind-body guy who said, I think before I am. So there's a whole tradition that's staying with the body and not making this bifurcation of body and mind. And that's the one that really gets involved with reading because it's your body is completely involved. There's other theories that use embodied mimesis is their phrase. And mimesis, by the way, is sort of the flip side of deixis. I, as author, create an orientation and point at it. So the very most basic thing is pointing. Like I'm saying, hey, look at that. And you're gonna, first of all, you are going to look at my eye regard as well as my point. I'm looking up there and say, hey, look at that. It's kind of weird. But I'm pointing as the writer, and you are looking where I point as the reader, right? Mimesis is follow, and deixis is lead. So it can easily just change places where you're the writer and I'm the follower. But I always like to say, the really, really long conversational turn that you're giving the writer when you open a book. You're saying, you got the floor for however long I'm going to read this, and then you might quit. Okay, so, and by the way, there's a really interesting difference between movies and other kinds of art and verbal art. And I don't think that, I'm not sure that they've really settled this, but my impression is, and you can tell from your own experience, that because you are creating that structure in your brain more actively than when you are watching a movie or something like that, you take more ownership of it. And it doesn't even have to be vivid in terms of vision. People always talk about put lots of vivid, visual detail. Actually, I think that one of my favorite authors is Kuzmakova, and I don't care. Talks about, it's more about your motor, sensory motor, sort of touch and feel of the narrative. In fact, she uses Merleau-Ponty's analogy of a stick, like a blind man with a stick, and we're kind of moving through it. So you're feeling all of the different things in the story. Okay, so you can see I could go on all day, and I'm not going to do that. Let's just look at some of the disciplines that are studying this. That's a short list. There's a lot more. So there's people all over the campus that have theories that are relevant to literary reading. It's just that, unfortunately, I don't think it's pretty impossible to keep up with them all. So that's why I like to take my slice as deixis. There are like probably 20 people in the world that are really focusing on that. So I can meet up with them at the same conferences when we talk about it. Because once you get past a certain point, like, for example, you think about reading a novel, I always started by looking at the first sentence because by then you don't have all that backlog, that you would have to do if you were like going to page 200. Imagine what's sitting in your brain at page 200. It's a lot. Amazing. And again, 2-year-olds, I don't think you do 200 pages, but they can go on. Okay, so, I like this one. The implication of this is, first of all, that those of you that been in my class know that my favorite saying is just read the book, because without that, we don't have anything. So I would say, would you take the class in, you know, bebop and you want to hear any bebop? Would you? Yeah, it's like you would just look it up on whatever the equivalent of. Yeah, Spark Notes. So you can fake it, right? You can talk a good game, but the whole thing is about the experience. Without that, there's nothing at all. So that's why, by the way, I never contradict, you know, people will say, oh God, I love, you know, Disney's Mermaid is so much better than Andersen's. You know, inwardly, but actually, I've never seen Disney's Little Mermaid. I've made it a point. But what I'm saying is yours. You know, if you love Little Mermaid and you have the most sublime experience watching it, who am I to say that you didn't? Right? Okay, I'm gonna shift to the Little Mermaid's friend, the little match girl. Let's see if I have a picture of the little match girl. I thought I did. That's all right. We got the. Yeah. Let's just. Okay, we don't have time now, probably for you to read it. Those of you who didn't have time, how many of you had time to read it? Okay, half the people here. So am I going to say, oh, you stay here? Okay, 5 minutes. Read the story. this story was written in 1845. And Andersen's publisher sent him 3 pictures. I don't think he'd ever done that before. And he said, would you write a story about one of these pictures? And that picture that's on the sheet there was on one of the pictures. And in one afternoon, he wrote a little magical. Sent it in. And it's probably on the list of 100 best narratives in the world. And it's quite a feat. And at the time that he wrote it, dying children were a common trope in children's literature, or shall I say, children's, whatever we're going to call it, that may not be very literary. Because, of course, many, many children were dying at the time of the child. And these stories seem to be intended, this kind of story, and to perhaps relieve the mind of a parent that they had gone to a better place and that, things would be all right. But there's some differences in this particular story, right? First of all, the critique of the adults in the story. There's a whole other genre which has to do with children who are smitten dead by God because they were playing when they were supposed to be reading or something like that, which you can clearly see are adult agenda kind of stories rather than something the child. So in this story, the abuse of the father or the child is unusual. I mean, she's not going home because she was being beaten, and besides, it's just as cold at home as it is outside. So the beginning of this story is very typical of Andersen in that it usually begins with a setting, and cold is often featured. But of course, it's Denmark, and it's New Year's. It's going to be pretty darn cold. But he begins by setting this sort of place. And there's a question you might have said, like the beginning of the story. Whether there's a narrator in the beginning of the story. According to the model I would use, you do sense an adult presence and so forth. Who is saying she's a pretty little girl, but clearly that adult is not involved, because presumably if he was, he'd be rushing to help her, right? Because it's not just like Sandra would say, oh, she's losing in that, that's great. However, you could just see it as sort of a conventional pity for the girl, especially the way it keeps calling her little. I always say, when I was little, I did not want to be called little, and I didn't feel I was little. And if you're inside the child, you're not thinking, oh, I'm cute, at least hopefully not these days. I've seen some pretty good videos of people like crying, and then here comes the camera. It's like, oh God, how self-conscious girl gonna make them. So, the little match girl comes into like the 3rd paragraph, and we go inside her inner experience. And you can tell, because she actually kind of sets up a little shelter for herself. In a corner formed by 2 houses, the 3rd paragraph, one of which projected farther out into the street than the other. That's the best shelter she can devise in being out and exposed. So once she does that, she's not moving, except to start fashion. She sat down on the door with her little feet under her. It's almost like a little fetus position, right? And then the next paragraph, her hands were almost dead with cold. Oh, how much one little match might warm her, with an exclamation point. Of course, Andersen, uses lots of exclamation points. He uses them to create kind of immediacy. Let's say the march soldier was march, 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 or kind of bring you into the sound. But then she immediately thinks if she could just take one of the matches out, and strike it on the wall. Well, there's a whole theory of fiction that kind of goes with, that we make our minds like tissue paper to kind of go in for this wall. I love that that wall is a solid wall, and when she strikes the match, it goes right through the wall into the room inside. So that's kind of standing for the consciousness that she's in, which is, I will call it a middle voice consciousness, yet another way. Middle voice is when you are not, like if you were the narrator of your story, but you were also the person who was being affected in the story. In other words, middle voice means whatever I say affects me. And the same goes for reader and for writer. That in literary writing, you feel that the collaboration is not putting something out there. It's exposing something in here. And that goes for reader and writer. Okay, so she drew it out, how it sputtered and burned. It made a warm, bright flame, and then the match went out. And of course, the first is the 2 matches. You know this, of course. How many matches she has? The meal match with the turkey that jumps off the plate, which is like, who does that? First time I thought of that, the turkey jumping off the plate to go to the little girl, I thought, first of all, only Andersen would have that, because it's like a fork and knife stuck in its back, and it's coming over like, oh, we're gonna have dinner, you know, presenting itself. Andersen makes everything from the moment, and he had a mother who's sort of trolled, alive trolls and everything was part of her mind. So his mind kind of spanned 2,000 years, I think, from animist, everything's alive, to his father, who was like an Enlightenment thinker and thought that, about comets being actual celestial bodies. And Hans said, no, the lightning's gonna strike us if you say that. So he was right in the middle of those two. So, how are we doing? There was another match, and there was a tree. And then the lights kind of began to go out of the match, and they go into the sky, and they end up being stars. And one of them fell. Now someone is dying, not the little girl, her little grandmother, the only person that had loved her and was now dead. I told her that when a star fell down, a soul went up to God. Now, it doesn't take many readings before you realize who's going up to God. Yeah. But I always say, we are too. We are included in that statement, that we are all in the predicament of life. We're not all freezing on street corners, but we can imagine that could happen to us. And things that were miserable did happen to us. So that, there's just a spot there for the worst misery we could ever think of. And then she sees grandmother. And she's saying, I don't want you to go out like the match. So she takes the full bunch and strikes them. Okay, that's Hans Christian Andersen. That's the one who writes the story. And you were saying to people, it's like, he is depressing, but he's depressing in a transcendental way that is, by the way, earned. That was his life. I would guess that he had probably more than 5 near-death experiences. And probably one of them is represented as a nightingale. I love that story of the nightingale comes to sing with the emperor. And death is in the room and says, oh, you make me want to go tend my roses. And he leaves the emperor and goes back to where death lives, when he's not on your chest. I mean, it's a brilliant moment. All the times when he kind of just came to that moment, and the emperor seeing his evil deeds and everything in the sky. So, love him or hate him, the guy is for real. And he earned the weird plot twists that he had to chop off your feet, change your tail for, change the tail for feet. It's always a lot of feet. But my point is that the child's own experience there, if there is a narrator there, I don't care. It does not have weight the way the actual self of the child does. And at the same time, I feel that there's irony, there's irony between these uncaring adults. And by the way, we're reading the story. We don't know whether we would have been just crossing by, like we are put in the position of being, look, this is what's happening. And that's, of course, 19th century social, Dickens and Jane Eyre and all that sort of stuff, pointing out how miserable the lives of children were.
You see them on the streets with Indian parents.
Yeah. So it's making it so you can't look away. And by the way, it changed people's opinions about it. I always say Andersen, for me, is the first children's literature author. Because he is putting himself in the child position and putting himself there very, as Jackie Wolfschreiber says, he's a serial autobiography. So he's always made character of every story. Okay, so point is that there could be a narrator popping up now and then in the story, especially when establishing storytelling conditions, but it usually fades away. And then it might come back at the end where somebody said, oh, you have to put a moral on that. Well, I define you to put a moral on a little match girl that isn't against adults. Like, what, she wasn't good enough, what? So it's not one of those stories that is a cautionary tale against kids, but it's a story telling how children feel and suffer, and how they're ignored by adults, who are simply going about their business and their carriages. The only other person in this story who has sort of personality is the little boy who steals another slipper. And what does he say? He says he could use the slipper as a cradle someday when he had children of his own. Another Andersen kind of thing to say, right? In fact, he said that he was born in a coffin. His mother couldn't afford bed, so they got a casket. So, just to say, it matters whether you see there being a narrator who's above the world and he is not subject to it, versus a character who is part of the soup. And I would say that, the good authors are the ones where you feel I'm part of the soup. I'm not the exception. I'm not the person up here telling you about children. This is interesting about William Blake, by the way, who is a fantastic poet of childhood. I always feel that his poems are empathetic, that he did personally feel those miserable things. But he immediately saw what was wrong with adults and children, and he championed the child in all of his poems. So that's slightly different from being the child. We've all been children. And in Rico's theory, that's the part of us that we continue to go back to in terms of poetry, in terms of writing. That's the narrative. I'm not saying it doesn't change at all, but it's sort of a geological narrative before the historical narrative. So you might not even feel like I ask people, like, do you remember learning the native language? That's pretty important to you, isn't it? You remember, so there's this whole slice in our life where nervous system is being established. And the way people are treated has everything to do with how you feel in your life. I'm not saying, you can't change anything, but it's there. It's in your cells. So that's to me where people are going when they're writing great children's literature. They are allowing that layer of themselves to, I just say, rather than voice, I would prefer the thought of surfacing. Something is surfacing. And it's not necessarily the vocal. You could be just, you could be carried over in various ways. I like to think, since I teach children's literature, and I also write about animal consciousness in novels. By the way, Amanda, the call the dog, about the dog, who just not that's the level that where we really live in some way. So in a conversation like this, you kind of have to, you follow the orders of social consensus, and you're not kind of be hard to get that. And like in the literature, you can go in. So it's almost like where people dare to go. I'm not very interested in sort of social realism, just because a lot of it, I'm there with the modernists. I love, I'm even one D.H. Lawrence, and that seems to have gone on from that. But, Virginia Woolf, that they go deep into thoughts. And children's literature has a lot of that in another way, going into nonverbal experience and representing it, not in stream of consciousness, which would imply, that you're thinking in language, but something. I think there's.
Well, we've got time for questions and conversation.
All right.
So would anybody like to ask a question?
Oh, yeah. What's that? Yeah, right. Well, you can be part of what that means. I mean, what do you think the implications are? I always said, I said in that interview, don't come between the child and the book. To me, that's a kind of a sacred relationship. Someone who's reading a book, you must come in and kind of point it. This causes problem for me in teaching, as you know, public classes. Like, while we're still reading the book, what to talk about in class, rather than start picking it apart and do, whatever people do with it. I always say, first of all, and just see what the language is. And that's, of course, for college students. But for small children, I do say that if you are going to talk about it after everybody's read it, you better go for where it really goes. Like I think of Holes. That story, it's about the Holocaust and, all these difficult races and all those things. So are you going to talk about that in your second grade class? Well, if not, better just let them read the book. Because it's better than giving a shower. So I just think it's weird now because I'm not going to ask this group, but how many people voluntarily read books? Nothing to do with class. Children. Like from age of literacy to
There's YouTube videos to watch. You don't have time.
listen, I love them too. There's never too many cat videos. And by the way, isn't it interesting that why animals we are so pulled in by animals? That's a really important thing about how our bodies are.
I was going to say, I know some of you have to leave at the top of the hour, so if you wanted to use this occasion to slip out, you're more than welcome to. Just do it quietly. And just, you won't be being rude if you slip out right now. Just kind of quietly slip out. Already
Yeah, unfortunately, I had to keep going, but I wanted to say that I'm working a lot with Sandy Beckett, and he was very influenced by detail.
Yes.
One of the most powerful things is pre-verbal, pre-utterable sensations that are life. And that living through the left word you call it, and it's like any child is confirming my heart, same place, circular back or
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
and it's just beautiful thing that how you were able to give that snapshot.
Oh, thank you very much. And I know several really good books about this and Beckett, if you're
I
interested.
would love that. Oh my God.
Just, keep that in or come by.
Okay, thank you. Hey, how's it going? How are you doing? It's great. Good to see you.
Yeah, so there, you know, and the general term in children's literature, a large swath of it is literature as anything written for children as a narrative. And so they're going in very pedagogical, and most, I think of Perry Noble saying, you know, the hidden adult, their hidden adult is all over all of children's literature. And I, well, if that's really so, it's not literature, I don't know what it is, but I will also say that there's also something going on beyond what the adult is doing, so that, you know, any moment that the adult isn't in charge and trying to run everything, see what else is going on. In fact, I have a secret fondness for Isaac Watts, the guy who wrote about the busy bees.
We just talked about that in my children.
Yeah, and he was a child prodigy, and he like the word break and whatever. So to cut to the chase, all of his very, very pedagogical, very, very stern things about how you have to read or lightning will strike you and God will never look you in the face and it will be terrible. And I'm thinking, like, this was his childhood experience. And in every poem, you see the resistance. He really doesn't want to do it. You can feel it. You know, the guy has enough of a honesty in him to kind of admit that, even as he's telling these poor kids to read your books and you know,
And healthful play.
and help. Oh, yeah, he's the one we have to thank for the general fund's work for providing
That's right.
That's the one. Now, I will give a question. Yes.
What do you think influences, like, what makes people enjoy certain types of literature? Like, why, like, I'm more attracted to, like, say, sci-fi instead of, like, children's literature?
Yeah. Well,
It was children's literature science.
well,
I just taught about, last 2 years ago, I taught a class, science fiction for young people.
science fiction for dumb people.
For young.
And then, I can break like
Anyway, but what I love about this is I'm like sort of the punchline won't reach everybody is that we all need to be theorists. Don't look to somebody else for your theory. Like gather the things that make sense to you and then put them into your theory of art, and you will find it. So because the humanities are in such disarray, they're not like claiming the territory at all. You know, what's your thing about aesthetics? You know, the thing that makes it beautiful is what we don't talk about. So there's a reason, I'm sure. I don't know what it is, I don't know yet. But I'm saying there's something primordial in the sci-fi. And really, I would say, and I'm going to make an admission that I think I have to pay to my classes. I'm an Outlander fan, which is that this one that has this time travel to Scottish. And I don't know why, but oh boy, well, I'm in the sex scenes, you know. But, it's just absolutely grabbed me. And I'm of Scottish heritage. It's like I'm making the trip to Scotland next year if I can make it. And all I can say is, you know, admit it. You know, there's something that's really, really compelling. And I will say, it's really part of it, well written. But I have to try to correct it. So just to say, admit what fools you, admit what, you know, I'm not against being for, you know, genre literature, except that I'm all about characters myself. If the characters are kind of two-dimensional, are there good characters in some sci-fi? Yeah, not really. That's
No,
not
did you
really-
say feed sci-fi, right?
Well, that's pretty good, I
Yeah,
like Feed.
they're pretty good, yeah.
But that, of course, is, what would you call that, parody?
Yeah.
Satire, satire.
Social
Oh, by the way, you see the AT&T adopted his slogan. It's your thing for their thing, and we're gonna do their thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there we are. Okay, so I want everybody to have their own theory. I learned that from Eugene Gentleman, one of my heroes, who teaches you to kind of pay attention to your own body and how you respond to different.
But don't you think it's also important, I mean, when I was in college, I purposely read things that didn't grab me. Because I do think that if you, and then you learn, then they begin to grab you, like you learn how to like different kinds of
Well,
things.
that's why I
It's
think
easier.
literature classes,
Yeah.
I always say, I'm gonna teach you, we're gonna use books that you wouldn't read yourself. And you know, I might bump into something that would be really meaningful to you.
Or
Because
read
on your
others.
own, you're just gonna go read them, and that's fine, that's since I'm all about reading rather than necessarily.
Because people grow and change, and their literary taste can change as well, but they won't change if you don't read widely. So if you like one kind of book, and that's all you read, you'll reinforce the same kind, I think unfortunately narrow, set of literary tastes, but if you read widely, you can learn to like different
That's
kinds
me,
of things.
I'm sweet now.
Yeah, oh, no, I'm
But
not.
I only like the kids, right? Like when Anna Green Gables gets to be about 15, I don't care. When Little House on the Prairie, when she gets to be 10, man.
That's why I say when children die as children. You have to watch them grow up and become teenagers.
So I just find that very compelling. So I wonder, obviously, I once asked my mom, because I really liked the Winnie the Pooh story in which Winnie the Pooh visits Rabbit's burrow and eats too much lunch and can't get out of the hole. I said, Mom, was I like a forceps birth? What? why am I so worried about like, how do I get out of this
Squeezing
hole?
out.
And she said, forceps birth, but how did she do? She was all cool.
You like the scene in The Hobbit when he's trying to squeeze out of the tunnel and can't get out, when he just gets the root of the Hobbit?
No, I don't remember that, except that I do remember the first line of the Hobbit and where it came from. You read it on blue, that part of the
Exam.
Yeah, you know, they used to use blue books, yeah. It was a little blank space. And he
A hole
wrote,
in the ground.
a hole in the ground at the bottom. That's the beginning. So that's what I mean by, so subconscious, I like these quotes where authors say, you know, I just stumbled on it, I don't know. You know, or the characters started talking to me. So there is something that they're letting go of. But what they're good at is putting words to that. They're good at capturing what those folks have said.
And continuing to work at it. A lot of us say, oh, I have a great idea, and then you just don't do anything with it. You know, it
I'm not a
takes
fiction writer.
the commitment
I
of
was-
sitting down
Well,
to
it
finish.
was many years ago, but
Yeah, John Cage talks about, because we do a lot of modernist art too, people say, I could have done that. And John Cage was like, why don't you? Why didn't you?
that's a Picasso one. Isn't it?
Yeah.
People always say like, my Guido can draw that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, but can you?
Or why
Remember in
didn't
my classes, I'm always saying draw pictures and, you know, kind of liberate the inner drawer.
So are there any other questions you have? Or Mary, what we have here?
Yes.
Well, when you were making that anecdote about like the story about Shirley, step away from the water, Shirley,
Yeah.
like it is obvious that as people grow up, they tend to leave that kind of imaginary realm behind them. But it is interesting because like through books and novels, like you kind of manage to like travel back to it. But what would you say would be the adults' role to it? Like, should they focus on just saying the beach chairs and just finding a spot and just drinking coffee, or should they also in some way attempt
That's a
to?
really good question. And I think there's different ways of doing the same thing too. But it's almost like you're asking, should there be an adversarial relationship between adults and children? And some people would say yes, but I think the fantasies in fantasy picture books indicate that children are longing for adult companionship, we have a lot of things that are, come away from the water, Shirley, she goes to find pirates to play with. So, and gorilla, she dreams of gorilla in the night and goes off with it. That's a very deep desire on the part of children. So the question is, is there anything that adults can do to become more playful or become more accepting, to become more, permeable boundaries? Yes.
Encourage, like, because I want to go into like special education and whatnot, and are going to be more slowly learners. And I have a learning disability myself, and I was considered a really slow reader. And I always thought I stopped at reading, so I never really gave it a try until college, and I scored advanced in reading, which freaked me out but I ended up getting extra time on it, and so I'm just in my head, I'm like, just because you're a slow reader doesn't mean you're a bad reader.
Absolutely.
I think it's because, I don't know if they still have it in like elementary schools or whatnot, but they used to have like AR tests, where you would have to read a book really fast, and then you take a test.
For comprehension.
Yeah, but then there would actually like a question that's like, not even like a main topic, it'd be like, oh, what was the, like,
Like,
which friend
gotcha.
in the book, I'm like, you know?
Well, there's a couple of other things that I'd say. First of all, there are schools in pedagogy that don't have you teaching reading at 4 years old. And I knew from the beginning that when my son was not going to be right away, he was just like, that wasn't his thing at all. I think he didn't learn to read until he was 10, but he was in a school that didn't push reading. I actually went out of my way, it's like Harriet Tubman School. The Waldorf philosophy is that you don't teach reading until the third, fourth grade. Now, that's not appropriate for everybody either, but I would just say, I would bet that almost these days, especially, children would learn to read no matter what, they're reading the internet, they're reading everything, so I wouldn't even worry about that. But it's more like, in terms of enjoying reading, I would sit down and make a book with a child. You take dictation, you have to illustrate it, put it in a book, do something creative that's about them being a creator rather than, because children naturally lead their own play all the time.
And making stories to go along.
Yeah, exactly. And some of it is very normative, like you have to do this, you have to do that, and some kids are like it. But others are like, oh no, here comes the spaceship and knock that out.
I like at the beginning of, I think it's through the Looking Glass, where Alan says she wants to play kings and queens. And her sister says, you can't be kings and queens, you have to be a king or a queen. And Alice is like, I want to be kings and queens.
It's my world.
Yeah.
It's great.
I can be kings and queens.
Yeah, in fact, I've seen a whole sexual reading.
Yeah. Is there another question or?
But I mean, just to kind of finish up though, with that is that, if you're within an institution, that's going to place all sorts of barriers.
Yeah.
It's almost like you like to just begin at the beginning and not have to.
Yeah.
If you're inclined to, if there's a child that's being harmed by one of those kinds of ideas.
One question for me, it's always hard for me to start reading a book, and even when I'm reading it and I'm liking it, it's hard for me to continue it. How do I but how do I clear my head to make me feel like I'm a decent reader? Because I know I'm a decent reader, but just because of the past, it's just hard for me to
So
pick
it's
up a book.
just a habit that you think you've got?
Yeah.
I know, I have that habit too. You can tell from my line and have to do it, day and look at this stuff, and I should be grading papers, so. But those distractions are there for all of us, and they're making all of us very distracted. So I think you have to actually maybe decide for yourself in other certain hours, or anyway, up to you.
Yeah.
The same thing with having children. When do you want your children to have free access to technology? I would say at least 10 years old.
When it comes to reading, she's saying I think it have a hard time starting or finishing, which I think that there's something to be said for going somewhere and not bringing your phone and sitting down and reading, like in a park or something, where that's the thing that you can do. Because when I'm at home, I'm the same way. I'll start reading, and I'm like, okay, I got to finish the football class tomorrow. Then I'm like, you know what I'll do? I'll have a sandwich. Maybe I'll go to do that. I'm gonna do some laundry, I'll start this.
Yeah, I would say you really find out how much you don't want to do when you're doing housework.
That's right, like,
And just seeing Blackboard, the graphics, and you click on that button that says, needs grade.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
As a teacher's burden is this paper that I have. But I do love students, I just don't like it.
Is there anything else, or? Well, thank you guys for coming, it's been really fun, thank you, Gary, for this wonderful talk.